Welcome in, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens, to Shield's Rest. I'm Brown.
Non-fry.
Thank you for joining us again. This will be our fourth video of the series where we cover the playtest rules. Today we are going to be covering the Ancestries system, and I'll let Fry take it over while I jump down to that page.
Yeah, so ancestries are the physical representation of your character. So it's describing what your character looks like. The way that is portrayed mechanically is your ancestry traits. So these are like your physiological properties, the abilities that your characters have. You're going to start with 5 points that you can spend on these traits. They're going to have varying price points, and you'll gain another point at level 4, and then again at level 7. The different kind of traits that you're going to have are your minor traits. These cost nothing. They give like a minor benefit, mostly flavor, and you're going to be limited to just one. So you can't just like stack up on a bunch of minor traits just to have them. And then you're going to have your negative traits. Your negative traits have a negative point value. So they're going to take away from that pool of 5 that you have. They're going to provide a penalty to your character, but they're going to increase what you can get later on through your default and your expanded traits, which I'll let Brown get into.
Yeah, and so here the first thing we have with the default ancestry traits, that's just what it might sound like. So that's the options that are kind of preset. So just throw human out there, for example. There's already a preset that adds up to the 5 total points you have maximum of traits that make up what the human race is. So just as it says in the book, they're like, I want to be an elf. Okay, then if you're just picking like default elf, then you start with those traits that equal those 5 points, and you just you can go from there. Now each ancestry also has a list of expanded traits, and that's where you see more of those like negative traits or minus traits that you can use to basically you'll take a negative to get another benefit from something else. So you can have a number of ancestry traits as long as the end result is 5. Uh, and we'll see that as we won't go into every ancestry in this video, but what we'll do toward the end is we'll both pick one that we thought was really cool or that we want to talk about, and so you'll at least get to see those two ancestries. But again, links in the description. These playtest rules are available online, so you can go and see those yourself as well. And then next we'll talk about Ancestry Origins. Looking at Ancestry Origins, we're going to jump in first with the Ancestry flavor. This is more of your physical representation of what your character looks like and the traits that they might possess. Doesn't necessarily look like that ancestry, right? So if you're thinking mixed ancestries, which we'll get into a little bit, but here the example in the book is dwarf and elf. Those are the two ancestries. So you might be tall and slender like an elf, but have a huge beard, or the opposite, you might be a thick, stocky dwarf, but have like really smooth skin or fair skin. So that's interesting to even think about that. But those traits that you can get from that ancestry are in your control, like what your appearance is. And just jumping to the other side of the page about appearance, may be different than what your species is. You could make a whole new species or a species that's not in this book. It's just whatever you and your game master work together to say, yep, that's the flavor that matches your character, and yes, that matches the vibe of the campaign, or etc. So this is totally uh, to give you that flexibility immediately, right? Because Ancestry is one of the first things you pick when creating a character. You immediately have that flexibility and that flavor to make the character the way that you want it. Um, the next thing we'll jump into is just with the mechanics piece down here. And this is just talking about, the example here, a big barbarian. So they chose Giantborn and Orc together. They made that, just kind of an ogre-born class or ancestry. That's not necessarily in this book, but that's kind of how you can mesh those mechanics together to make another standalone ancestry. And then there is also um, a piece in here about lore and flavor. So any kind of thing that makes up the background of your character, you can use those to tailor into like what your ancestry might be that fits that background, that culture, even including like your name, for example. And then next we'll get into ancestry creation, where I'll pass it over to Fry.
And yeah, jumping into ancestry creation. So every ancestry is going to start with these three base traits that you see there on the screen. So your size is going to start as medium. Your movement speed is going to be 5 spaces, and then your creature type is going to be humanoid. So that's standard across the board. When you're choosing your ancestry at character creation, you're basically going to choose between 1 or 2. If you're going with one ancestry, you will have the option to gain an additional ancestry's traits at level 4 or 7 when you gain those extra points. Maybe your character discovers that they are mixed ancestry, and you start tapping into uh,
Love it.
those little hidden abilities that you've always had. Or you can just start with 2 right out the gate, and that means you have access to both those lists from the get go and all the way through your character's life. So now we're going to get into spending the points. So, like I said earlier, you're going to start with like a total of 5. For every trait that you select, it's going to have a numerical value to it. And you're basically just going to do math, right? Start with 5, you get 1 trait that costs 1, you go down to 4 all the way until you run out of points. If you choose one of those negative modifiers, it's going to take you right back up and it's going to give you the option to pull more traits than you would normally have access to. Um, Again, you have those minor traits, you only get 1. So even if you're mixed ancestry, you can only pick 1 from either side. You cannot select duplicate traits. So if you have, I think later on you'll see like halfling and gnome. This is a negative trait, for instance, but they both have that short stature. You can't pick that twice to get like the -2 to get more traits later on.
Double short stature. Yeah.
You Yeah, just double short, so now you're tiny. Um, if that trait has any requirements, you must meet those requirements to accept it. So, particularly when we get into Beastborn, there's going to be a lot of traits that say, hey, you require this level of flying to get this next level of flying, which we'll get into later. And then any traits that increase your mastery, whether that be a skill, trade, language, etc., you still have to follow your level limits, like we discussed in our previous video. So at level 1, you can only be that novice, I believe it was,
Mm-hmm.
all the way through, unless the trait specifies that you can go past it. And then the thing that I really love is if you obtain a talent or feature later on that your ancestry provides you, you get to now change your ancestry trait to something you don't have. So you don't end up wasting any abilities, which I think is really great because that's nothing is more frustrating. And like having this build, you pick your class, your subclass, and it like I think, for instance, you choose like a warlock with like an ocean theme, but you picked an ocean ancestry, and you're getting that swim speed, the breathing water, and now you just have it twice. It always feels like waste. So I really love that you have that option to kind of swap those out.
Yeah, I'll say the system's very focused on making sure that you have a strong character in the way that you imagine the character being. And that can do nothing but elevate the role play and help you buy into role play and, you know, get your real attachment to the character that allows you to lock in and like kind of become that character while playing in a sense. And I just love the flexibility. I mean, pretty much everything we've covered so far, but and you'll continue to see it, if not more. The flexibility built into this system is just that every time I'm like, wow, that was smart.
Yeah, like one of those. It's always those when you read it, like another system, like, man, I'm really gonna have to like homebrew this into something I like, and here it's just kind of baked in. You never have to
Yeah,
like have that internal conflict of should I not do it? There's always
yeah.
rules or examples in place of like if you are gonna change it or you are gonna do this, here's how. So,
And I
really
think that's the
appreciate
thing
that.
with the tabletop community is that as people have grown and like shared a love for the game, they've shared their love for the game and they've found ways to develop it and adapt it even further. And so like, this is just the dungeon coach's way of playing. This is what he thinks works well, and I'm seeing it. So I appreciate that for sure. Um, Jumping over into the variant rules for the custom ancestries, this will reduce your available points to 4 if you choose more than 3 ancestries. So you can do that, right? Again, flexibility in the system. You can pick traits from any ancestry you want, but in certain situations like this, where you pick more than 3 or more, you get reduced to 4 because that just helps keep it balanced. There's also game master can decide to raise or lower the amount of points, right? So there's always that control of the game that can be changed. So your GM, sorry, might say, everybody gets 6 or everybody gets 4. Those limitations can be um, weaved in throughout that, and that has an impact on the game, right? So if you
Yeah,
get
like
lower
they how
points,
like
yeah,
you can flex it to a more if you want it to be a deadlier game or like a more casual game, you can just like hand them
exactly,
powers, or you can be like, nope,
yep,
you get 2, and
yep,
we're focusing just on class abilities now. So I
yeah,
get
I love it. That's exactly what I was
you
going
can
to
hear
say.
us
I
say it
was
a
gonna
lot.
gonna explain that piece of it and how it can really drive and change the game that you're playing, the campaign that you're playing. There's also this ancestry adoption. So, and that's just, again, you can take traits from any ancestry as long as that's like an agreed upon thing and allowed. Um, so pretty cool flavor there. Kind of like a create your own ancestry in a way. And then ancestry magic items. What do you think, Fry? What are you thinking on that one? You have any
Uh,
immediate thoughts on it?
I love this because I've done this before,
Yeah.
and I think it's such a fun way to get those like kind of like mystical and like
Mm,
more out there kind of abilities without like having to like sacrifice what your character's image is. Like there's nothing wrong with just wanting to play a human, but sometimes you do want those cool, like it says in here, I think it's like to breathe fire as an example.
yep.
Um if that's like what your character's idea is to like have this ability to like breathe out these elemental weapons, but you're like, I don't really view them as a dragon, give them a cool magic item. Now you have a plot device for your GM.
Mm.
Everybody wins. So yeah, I really love this. I've done it before. I recommend everyone try it once because it's a fun story beat. Um,
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm more rigid in my thinking, so I had to read this like 3 times before I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand what it's saying." But the first like 1 or 2 times, I was like, "I don't get it." But now, and even with your explanation, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's just another awesome addition to the system that can make this more fun." Like this doesn't add anything that would be not fun. This is nothing but fun. So, um, and with just this quick what the ancestry system is about, we have taken the time to kind of go through all of the ancestries ourselves and the traits that are available to them, and we've kind of categorized them in our own way. And so we're going to show that that chart or matrix to you briefly, just so you know what I'm talking about. So this is just an example of it, right? So you can see in the top left on the more Excel spreadsheet type thing that we have each of the ancestries that are currently in the system listed, and then we've color coded kind of the different categories that we think, and we've put a number assigned to that. So just down at the bottom, you can see Beastborn, for example. They've got the highest amount of available um, traits to them in those different categories, right? So they've got the most offensive, defensive, mobility, and utility. And just for visual learners to throw it in the chart, you can kind of see that there. But let's take Beastborn out of it. You can kind of look down there. Dwarf, for example, is one of the more defensive affiliated ancestries. So this is not something that you need to stick to or that you should use to like impact your decision of making a character. But this is helpful, especially for beginners. I feel if you see something like this and you're like, well, I'm really thinking I want to play like a defensive person, then you can know more immediately without really diving in. Okay, the dwarf has more defensive type things, and then you can go actually look at the dwarf and read what those are. So we won't harp on that, but I just wanted to throw this up here for everybody and share our opinion on that.
yeah, and all kind of really what it breaks down into is that if you look through those, each ancestry has like an option kind of for everything too. So it's also to highlight that like while yes, they do like kind of have specialties and all that,
Flexibility.
you really can't go wrong by just yeah, you can't really just go wrong with being like, I just want to be a human. I don't want to think up too much of it. It's going to be balanced all around. So it was a
Yeah,
really good way to highlight. I think like how kind of balanced everything is out,
absolutely. And
except
we've
for
already
Beastborn,
kind
but
of,
we'll get to that.
yeah, Beastborn's like, I'm not going to just play a Beastborn every time I play DC 20, but I know that they have a lot of capabilities. But you can only pick 5 points worth, right? So um,
Yeah,
that mix doesn't always mean that they're the best class or best ancestry.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
we've already kind of given you a sneak peek at human, but I don't think that's one that we're specifically going to cover. But there are a few on the screen right there, just so you can see those. But Fry, would you like to go first, or I can go first? Which one do you think might be a good one for us to dive in and look at more specifically?
Yeah, I can go first.
You're gonna pick Beastborn?
Yeah, so my favorite ancestry, I've talked about it enough in this video, is definitely the Beastborn.
Nice.
The flexibility of the Beastborn is just too good to pass up for me. I have a million character ideas in my head running at any given moment, and the Beastborn can fill probably 99% of them just with the amount of options that they have. The way Beastborn works is instead of having those default traits, you have a litany of traits, like 3 pages
three
worth of
three
traits.
pages worth, yeah.
And they're broken down into senses, mobility, with subcategories of mobility being like jumping and flying, your body ones, so that's like increasing your defense, your size, stuff like that, and natural weapons. Love natural weapons.
Yeah.
And then your miscellaneous, advantage on initiative checks, mimicry. Mimicry's fun. I played the Kenku in that one shot once, and it was so much
I actually
fun.
love that. Yeah, we should have all done a Kenku only campaign. I think that would have been great.
Yeah, they would have. And then all we could do is repeat what the other ones say.
Yes.
Um,
There's actually four
just to
pages.
highlight, it wasn't.
There's 4 pages of.
Yeah, so much stuff. Um, the kind of traits I want to highlight to show like what you can kind of do with it. First, I do natural weapons. This is where you pick up 2 natural weapons, gives claws, horns, fangs example. For a character idea I have currently, which you might see in an upcoming one shot that we do, is having horns or antlers, partnering that with the natural weapon passive trait that you pick as part of your natural weapons or can pick, where you can do a weapon style passive with your natural weapons. I would
Mm.
choose, we'll get into those more later, but I would choose axes, which its passive lets you do more damage to bleeding targets. I believe it's like one additional one.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
pairing that with rend, which lets you spend an action point to get the target to bleed.
I
And
already
so
hate
just with
and
those
love
3
this at
things,
the
it's a
same
whole
time.
and so and that's just costing an action point. So basically every attack, I'm sitting there trying to get them to bleed, and once they do start bleeding, I'm doing more damage. Um, and that's just a real quick off the cuff one that you can do with this. There are a million and one ways I'm sure that you can like specialize a build, and that's what I love the most about Beastborn.
Mm.
But what do you got?
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, just you can
Yeah,
spend like hours reading through the Beastborn traits and trying to like land on what are the 5 I want. I just see your list. Like, you got several negatives, several positives. It's just all over the place.
yeah.
For me,
I guess
I went a
also
little.
it's got one of my favorite negative traits too, which is the winged arms. Which
Oh
is
yeah, that
arms are also your wings. You can't hold anything. Like
yes,
I don't know.
it's
The
right
image is just
here.
funny to me.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
anybody wants to read it, it's right there. I went a little more basic, but not so much because I love the way that they do all the ancestries. I looked through all of them, and the one that I felt stuck out the most to me, or I felt like, oh, they really captured that, and that's really cool, and also has some unique things I didn't think of, is actually the orc, which is right here.
Love the
Uh,
orc.
yeah, so again, I think, just reading through these, it really captures the orc. Orcish Resolve was one that I was like, yep, that's going to make me want to do an orc because you can really like live in what an orc is in my mind, at least. That very melee, want to brawl and battle all the time. And oh, now if I happen to be on the bad end of that, I've got this like extra benefit to get to keep fighting more. And it just feels really genuine to my idea of what like an orc character I would play would be. Um, also like the orc rush, and there's also one down here, orc dash. Those are super cool. Like it, all of these are like, yep,
Yeah,
that
it's
makes
just all
sense.
all in your face.
Yeah, and it actually
Yeah.
there's a couple ancestries that have like mystical defense or physical defense reduction stuff. This has both, so you can you can like further negate your defenses to like gain these other like powerful benefits. So I really like the orc, I think. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think negative traits are like one of my favorite parts of the ancestry
Yes.
because that's why I think the most like that's where a character truly comes to life, right?
Mm,
Like everybody can just, make Superman and like just be great at everything, but to have but the traits that like give your character struggle and room for growth, I think is like really where
mm,
role play comes from, right? That's where your character's journey is those negative traits. And I like how they're baked into the characters themselves or the ancestries themselves.
yeah. Yeah. Totally awesome. It adds to the role play and helps you really embrace the character, and it's all on your own level of flexibility and what you can come up with. So I really love how they captured that real, RPG side of it. But yeah, that's it for this video. We appreciate everyone watching again. If you are returning or if you're new to this, we hope you enjoyed it. Please engage with us, leave your comments. We love to see your opinions. We want to hear if we messed up, if we misspoke, if we could have said something better. Let us know. We're also active in the Reddit community, so please post in there and give feedback and engagement. We look forward to making our next video with you, which, am I getting ahead of myself or is it time for character creation? I don't know. Let me look.
I think now it's time for character creation. The only
It
step
is
we'll be
time.
missing is the classes themselves, obviously, but I think we've covered enough where we can show like where
Mm,
you start with the character, and kind of get the image from your head, so to speak, onto paper, and then diving into classes hopefully after that, as well as some mechanics and stuff. And from here, really it's whatever the community is really interested in. If there's a
mm,
particular aspect you want us to dive into, alongside those classes, please let us know. Otherwise we'll just chip away at it, hopefully get everything to you, um and explore this system, because it's been a really good time reading through it. It's
yeah.
very rarely where we're like reading through a a playtest rulebook, anything has like sucked me in so much.
Yeah.
Like where normally I'll like read a section and be like, "Oh, I'll come back tomorrow." And in this, I've read
Yeah.
like 20 pages. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't even realize.
It's that genuine interest. I feel the same way about it. I will
Yeah.
say too, maybe this is a good place. Leave a comment. Which class would you like us to cover in our
Yes.
character creation? We have one in mind, but if there's any amount of interest, we'll change to that one. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess we'll leave it there, and we'll see you in the next video.